failing. You're afraid of what other people will think of you if you fail. But if you're afraid of that, imagine what they think of you when you aren't even trying. Oh yeah, they aren't.
I'm such a dick sometimes.
Is it strange to hear your angry toilet tweets read back to you now in the cold, harsh light of day? God, that was a particularly difficult poo I was cracking out there.
Real talk, the tweets that I have, people don't know this, but the tweets are notes to self.
Yep.
So they're just directed at me so that I can look back on them and be reminders of hey, don't do that. And so I think to myself, man, I'm afraid of doing this. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm afraid of what this person's going to think about me. Because if I were to be able to fail in quiet, in complete isolation, then I wouldn't care. And then I think, well, what if I don't succeed in public? What do they think then? Nothing, right? They don't think about me at all. And so obviously that comes from the perspective of seeking to gain approval and attention from others anyway. So it's listen, if you're insecure, which everybody is, let's be real, you might as well use the insecurity to get something out of it, right? One of my favorite things about entrepreneurship is use what you've got. And so a lot of people think that they need to fix their conditions in order to get the perfect conditions before they start. But the perfect condition is whatever one you're in, because it gives you whatever assets you have. That's the cards that you're dealt. And so you just play the hand. And a lot of people have great cards. It's man, I'm so afraid of it. It's use it. It's I have nothing. It makes you very dangerous because you have nothing to lose, right? One of the really interesting things I think about from a business perspective, but it probably applies to everything, is that there's always an advantage and a disadvantage from every position, right? So I remember Gym Launch is still a big company and still continues to grow, but in the gym licensing space, there's not many people who can compete with us there, right? And I would talk to guys who were in the space, I would talk at a conference, whatever, and younger guys would be well, I want to be in this space too, and it's not fair because you have this big advantage. And I was you have a way bigger advantage than I do. I was because if I were in your position, I would go to every single gym owner and be you don't want to be with Gym Launch. You don't want to be with Alex. You're just a number to him. You're never going to talk to him. You're just a cog in the wheel there. With me, you're going to get my personalized attention. There is just some employee down the chain that's following some process, right? I was but on the flip side, if I'm talking to that same gym owner, then I'm going to say, you don't want to talk to Jimmy. He lives in his mom's basement. He has no proof that he's good at what he's at. The reason that we're number one in the space is because we've done it so many times and we have a system that we know that if you go on this side, you will get this result on the outside. I was there's always a position and there's always an advantage. I was you just have to play the one you've got. And most people just look at what everyone else's advantage is and don't think, which one do I have?
When you're talking about, it's not you that's afraid of failing.
Yeah.
You're afraid of other people's opinions about why you're going to fail. The reason I think that cynicism is so popular on the internet is that the upside of never trying is never having to feel the pain of failure.
Yeah.
That's fundamental. It's sour grapes at an existential level, right? It is a cynicism safety blanket. It is protecting you from ever having to feel the downside of anything. I will assure my own failure in private so that I never have to face my failure in public.
It's kind of like investing. Everyone's afraid of losing money when they invest, but the only guaranteed investment that doesn't work is never investing to begin with. And so it's they take the long failure rather than the short one. Right? It's what it is, right? You just fail long. And they're I prefer that. But it's you and I are going back and forth on trying to figure out how many different ways can I say that either the people that you're worried about judgment are going to die, or that you're going to die, or that even if you do achieve the thing, they won't care anyways. Or if you don't do anything, they won't think about you to begin with. And don't you want to be thought about to begin with? Don't you want some level of significance? You're going to die. And I think I was very grateful. So one of my biggest inspirations or whatever, influences when I was in Baltimore was I would have lunch with my grandfather 3 times a week. So he was 90, old guy. So I would go to the nursing home and we'd have lunch 3 days a week. And listening to him talk about the regrets that he had in life, it's so much more painful to watch someone who has no options left. He's going to die. He's going to die tomorrow. And he died a couple of years later. And he lost all his mental faculties, almost sadly. Basically, when I left Baltimore, one of the sad parts is I was one of the only people that kind of kept him lucid. You know what I mean? And after that, no one really visited him. No one really did anything. And so I think he just rolled downhill. I think the lunches might have been the only thing that he looked forward to. And seeing someone old with no options and nothing but regret. Now, not that he had everything to regret. He had things that he did really well, and I took those things from him. He would repeat the same lessons. Like every lunch, we were a lot of older people kind of repeat a few key lessons. And everything that he fled during the World War II. He fled from the Germans and all that stuff because he had a Jewish sounding last name. He wasn't, but it was enough that he was fleeing, right? And he always used to say, he's like, you have two hands and one brain. He's like, use them. And that was always his thing that he said to me. And I think just like when I would think about the things that he was going up against compared to the things that we're going up against now, it just made me feel like, all right, like this is not as big of a deal as I really think it is. I don't have Germans at my door.
What were the regrets that you had?
Him?
Yeah.
He would have spent, again, there's deathbed regrets and then there's real life regrets, but there's things that he would have done differently in terms of the business. There's things he would have done differently with his wife. He got divorced, he would have done things very differently with his kids. So my mother and her sisters, which actually talking to him about how he raised my mother helped me in some way forgive her for some of the things that I felt were wrongdoings that she had done to me. And so it's funny because, one of my favorite quotes from Blaise Pascal is to understand is to forgive. And like when you, I think there's another saying that I like a lot, which is it's really hard to hate close up. It's like if you really see someone and you see all the things that they went through and the things that happened to them to become who they are, then you understand them and then you understand why they did X, Y, and Z. Because if we don't understand, we assume that it's because they're just evil people. And most people aren't that way. They're this way because they've been reinforced or punished for doing something like that in the past. And especially for her, she was reinforced for acting a certain way over and over and over again to the point that it was core to her character. And so when that got put on me, I was like, I hate you, you're terrible, you're evil, like blah. But like when I looked at it on a much longer time horizon of like she was 4 years old when she came here, she couldn't speak English, she got beat up as a kid, like all these things, I'm like, you know what? Maybe give her a little grace, And I remember when I came back, and it was right around that same time where I realized I was giving this person all this power. She yelled at me for something when I came back home from college my freshman year. And it was a standard fight, like here's the button that I press to get into the normal fight that we get into. I just remember she hit the button and I just like wasn't that upset. And it's like I felt nothing. She like hit the button, she like hit it again harder, and I was like, and I just remember looking at her and being like, I get it. I'm sorry. Like you had a tough life. And then she just broke down and started crying because it was like she felt understood. And I think I know that was a roundabout way of getting back to regrets, but he regretted how he had raised her. But through his regrets, I got to see why she was the way she was. And then it diffused the bomb that was between me and her.
Did I tell you that story Douglas Murray told me about regrets from